Welcome to segment 1 of lecture 4. Here we'll make the transition from our textual view of the clause as a message, examining the system of theme, to the interpersonal view of the clause as a move. And we'll make this transition through the observation of what guides the choice of unmarked topical theme in English. As we'll see, unmarked topical theme in English is selected in such a way that it reveals what I call the key interpersonal signature of the clause. So we'll begin the move from the yellow cell, textual at clause rank, to the red cell today. But let me begin with a recap of unmarked versus marked topical theme. So we've looked at this in texts of different types. We've seen that the choice between unmarked and marked topical theme relates to the method of development of a text. We've seen various text types where there is a good reason to choose a marked topical theme. For example, chronologically organized text, where expressions of time, representations of time, often turn up as marked topical themes. So in this example, nevertheless, unfortunately, many of these strategies utilize harmful organic solvents. We had a multiple theme, textual contribution, nevertheless, orientation to the discursive environment. Unfortunately, the speaker's intrusion, as it were, or writers in this case, with his or her angle on the information to be given, undesirable, in relation to the addressee, and then the choice of topical theme. Here then there is a choice between an unmarked and a marked topical theme. So in the version, top version, many of these strategies utilize harmful organic solvents. We have an unmarked topical theme. In this case, it's unmarked because it's a subject in a declarative clause. We'll look at this more systematically. But the writers could have chosen a marked theme, and this marked theme would then have been something other than the subject, but it would displace the subject. So for example, harmful organic solvents, many of these strategies utilize. When you listen to this, when you read it, it feels marked. Certain in the sense that you'd be more surprised to find it in terms of frequencies in a text, but it's possible. And if there is a good reason, then you choose a marked theme. But notice that it displaces many of these strategies as unmarked theme. Let me give you one more example. So this is a contrast between an unmarked theme, subject, again will be declarative clause, echoes, and a marked theme, a temporal adjunct. Let's look at the whole clause. So if you have the clause, Eccles was Professor of Physiology of the Australian National University from 1952 until 1966. Then you have a declarative clause and you have an unmarked theme. Why an unmarked? Because it's a subject. But let's say this is part of a biographical text about Eccles, then you would have good reason to give thematic status to the time from 1952 until 1966. So in other words, good reason to choose this as a marked theme, in which case you'd have the version on the top. So from 1952 until 1966, Eccles was Professor of Physiology of the Australian National University. So in this version, as you can see, the marked theme above displaces the subject as theme. But if you started with that, you could see that you could move it, as it were, later in the clause to some position within the rime, in which case you then reinstate the unmarked subject theme. The general question then is, if you haven't got to have a good reason to choose a marked theme, what will be theme by default? And in English, as in some other languages, it turns out that that's determined by the mood type. The mood type, that's an interpersonal system in the clause grammar. Now I'll come back to the following point, but this is one area where English and Chinese differ. So this principle of the nature of the unmarked theme, depending on the mood type, is valid for English, but not for Chinese in general. So what's the principle? Well, the principle behind the choice of unmarked topical theme in English is the unmarked topical theme of a clause reveals its interpersonal key signature. So the interactive contribution of a clause now as a move in dialogue. So the unmarked topical theme of the clause as a message reveals its interactive contribution as a move in dialogue. And in addition to the unmarked topical theme, this may also involve the interpersonal theme. So the interpersonal theme may also become part of signaling, indicating the interpersonal key signature, as we'll see. So for example, let's look at the contrast in mood type between declarative and yes-no interrogative. We can start with that as an illustration. And I'll take a panel with a dialogue exchange between Captain Haddock and Tintin. Let's magnify that and look at the exchange. So let's consider the unmarked themes in two of the clauses here. Haddock says to Tintin, he says, the doctor has ordered at least a week's rest. Now, in terms of mood type, that's a declarative clause. He's making a statement, he's giving information. And the principle is unmarked theme subject, which is the doctor. And you can test that in English by checking what would the question tag be. So the doctor has ordered at least a week's rest, hasn't he? So the doctor is that element you pick up in the question tag, and that's a clear indication that that serves as a subject of the clause. We'll have more to say about this. But as a first probe, question tags are very good for checking the identity of the subject of a clause. So the doctor has ordered at least a week's rest, unmarked theme in the declarative clause, the subject. What does Tintin reply? It says, oh, has he? So Tintin's reply is in fact an interrogative clause of the yes-no type. And this is very often the way we reply to declaratives, to statements. We echo them with a question. Oh, has he? What's the theme here? Well, it has an unmarked topical theme, subject he, but is preceded by an interpersonal theme, the finite has. So Tintin's theme here, apart from the O, which is textual theme, is has he. And you can see how cleverly English has evolved to make this crucial distinction between declarative, theme, unmarked topical subject, and interrogative yes-no, interpersonal theme, finite, followed by unmarked topical theme subject. So in other words, he has he? The difference then is actually the topical theme is the same, but in the yes-no interrogative, the clause also thematizes the finite. Why is that? Well, it's the finite, as it were, that is a carrier, the bearer of the indication of polarity. Yes or no? So when you start with has, this immediately reveals the interpersonal key signature of the clause. I'm demanding information from you, more specifically about the polarity. Is it yes or no? Or has he? So this is part of the general pattern in English. In English, the choice of the unmarked topical theme is determined by the mood type of the clause, what I call the interpersonal key signature. And that may be backed up, as I put it before, by the interpersonal theme. So in the most common mood type, that's a declarative, giving information. Here the unmarked topical theme is subject, as in I shall go home. If instead of declarative, you give information, you have an interrogative, typically means you're demanding information, then there are two basic types in English. There are two basic points of interrogation. Yes or no, as we've already seen. Then, before the unmarked topical theme, you have an interpersonal theme, the finite. And then that's followed by unmarked topical theme, subject. Shall I go home? There is one other type of interrogative in English, in this interrogative, the point of interrogation is not polarity, yes or no, but it is a participant or circumstance in the clause. So tell me something about the content. That's what you're demanding with the WH element. Who, what, when, why, how, why. I said that already. What's a WH element? Well, it's actually a fusion of interpersonal and topical theme. The interpersonal theme is demand, and the topical theme is a participant or circumstance in the clause. For example, where shall I go? Or who should go? Or why shall I go? The WH element. So in English, the WH element is thematized as the interpersonal key signature, and what it tells the addressee is, I'm demanding information from you, and I'm demanding information about a participant or circumstance. Finally, we have one more mood type, major mood type, the imperative. And this is typically in English a command, like go home. Now, what's the topical theme here? Well, typically just the verb, as in go home. Interpersonally, the function here is predicator. We'll have more to say about this. But if you run through, then you see you have the contrast I, shall I, where, go. So in each of these major mood types, the unmarked topical theme, plus possibly backed up with a interpersonal theme, reveals the interpersonal key signature. Let me take a little snippet of dialogue from Gone with the Wind. Not a sequence of dialogue, but examples. So that's your misfortune. Declarative, subject as unmarked theme. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes, no, interrogative. Finite as interpersonal theme, followed by subject as unmarked topical theme. Where shall I go? What shall I do? The WH element as a fusion, as it were, of demand for information, interpersonal theme, information about the participant or circumstance, unmarked topical theme. And an imperative, take me with you, the verb, the predicator, here preceded by an interpersonal theme, adjunct of entreaty, please, please. So if we set this out as a kind of structural diagram, you see the contrast. Okay? Declarative, only subject, yes, no, interrogative, finite, followed by subject, WH interrogative, the fusion of the interpersonal and the topical theme, and finally imperative, the predicator. So this is actually the dialogue where I took the examples from, between Red Butler and Scarlett O'Hara. So Red said, I'm going to Charleston, back where I belong. Scarlett, please take me with you. Red, now I'm through with everything here. I want peace. I want to see if somewhere there isn't something left in life of charm and grace. Do you know what I'm talking about? Scarlett, no, I only know that I love you. Red, that's your misfortune. Red, if you go, where shall I go? What shall I do? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. So I took this passage partly, we've had it before, but partly because you get a rapid illustration of the different mood types, and each of them has an unmarked topical theme with possibly...
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
The interpersonal key signature. So interpersonally, it's varied.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
So that's Clark Gable's rendition of this famous line. So in the metafunctional analysis then, we've gone through the clause as a message, that's the texture layer, theme plus reme. We've looked at themes consisting of only topical theme, or possibly a textual theme and a topical theme, or interpersonal theme and a topical theme. And now we're moving to the clause as a move in interactive dialogue. That's an interpersonal analysis. And in this example then, please, that's an interpersonal adjunct of entreaty, given the status of interpersonal theme. And then the unmarked topical theme, predicator, and then the remainder, complement and adjunct. And then finally, after we've gone through this in the next few lectures, will turn to the clause as a figure, the experiential line. Now, this was quite a bit of a recap and running through of the principle behind unmarked topical themes. So I think it would be good to have a little interlude. But let me take an interlude that illustrates something interesting about dialogue. You could say it illustrates how to ruin a dialogue. This is a sketch from A Bit of Fry and Laurie, a well-known BBC TV series from the 90s with Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, both very brilliant entertainers, actors and so on. And the sketch itself points to the way you might ruin a sketch.
Well, Mr. Everard, thanks for agreeing to be with us today. Pleasant journey down, I hope?
Not pleasant exactly, no.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Sorry, I just want to say that this sketch that we're doing now is my absolute favourite one of all time. I just love this one. And watch what Stephen does in this, because it's fantastic. He is brilliant in it. Sorry, carry on.
So not a pleasant journey down?
No. Not pleasant at all. Now, just watch the way he does this next bit, because it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. Oh, God, it's fantastic.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear. Well, I can't do it as well as you can do it, but it's just fantastic. Oh, dear. I just love it. Brilliant. Oh, sorry.
So, was it the weather or the traffic or something?
No.
No?
No. This next line coming up is my favourite line of the whole thing. This is brilliant. Just watch the way he does this. This is fantastic. Just coming up. No. I was murdered at a petrol station on the A1. Now, listen to this. Listen.
I beg your pardon?
Sorry, it's the next one. It's the next line. It's not that one. Yes, I was murdered.
Murdered? Who by?
No, it's not that one either. It's coming up, honestly. I was stabbed through the heart by a civil servant.
Stabbed through the...
Killed me stone dead.
Then what are you doing?
This is it, this is one. Listen.
Then what are you doing sitting here in my office?
All right, that's what interpersonal analysis will do to dialogue. You will notice they sort of break the conventions. Normally, a dialogue proceeds by a number of exchanges. Somebody initiates, somebody responds, but of course, they stay within this dialogic relationship. They stay within the speech roles, initiating, responding, giving information, demanding information, and so on. What Hugh Laurie does here is deconstruct this normal pattern. Okay? And in technical terms, what he does is he breaks the fourth wall. That is, what is called the fourth wall is a wall that between performers and their audience. So normally, in a play, in a film, whatever it might be, there is this wall and it's not broken. But sometimes actors, performers will turn to the audience the way Hugh Laurie does. Okay, enough of an interlude. So taking a step back now, we're moving into the clause in dialogue. And the key system now, the most important system, was the system of mood. Just as when we looked at the clause as a message, the key system was the system of theme. But we will also need to refer actually to the semantic system that is key in the organization of dialogue, in the exchanges in dialogue. So we will, as we build up the description of mood, we'll refer to the way it realizes the dimensions of speech function. But let me return first to the function rank matrix so we know where we're located. So you remember this horizontally meta function and then vertically rank and within group phrases classes. We've been concerned with the clause as a message, looking in particular at the system as theme. And we're now moving into the clause as a move, And the transition was this observation that I made earlier, that the interpersonal key signature is revealed through the choice of unmarked theme in English. So we'll be looking at this, and the most nuclear system or central system is the system of mood, but there will other systems that relate to this we'll be concerned with, like polarity, modality, vocative, and so on. But we'll start with the system of mood. And we can say the system of mood is, in a way, the grammar of dialogue. Okay. So the system of mood is the central system of the clause as a move. As I said, grammar of dialogue. And it realizes the semantic system of speech function. Let me say something about speech function, but because when we understand the semantic system of speech function, we'll understand which kinds of speech functions, speech acts are grammaticalized in the system of mood. So speech function is a semantic system for exchanging commodities in dialogue, for initiating and responding to changes, and it's based on two variables, actually three as we'll see, but the two that are central to us now are direction, orientation of speech function. Either one interaction is giving something or demanding something. What is that something? It's a commodity. What is the nature of the commodity? Well, either it's a commodity made out of language, information, or knowledge if you prefer, or it's a non-linguistic commodity, goods and services. And when you combine these, you get the traditional speech functions that have been recognized for a long time. So giving information, that's a statement. Demanding information, that's a question. Giving goods and services, that's an offer. And demanding goods and services, that's a command. So let me give examples from the passage we had before, from Gone with Wind. So giving information statement, that's your misfortune. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Demanding information, question. Do you know what I'm talking about? What shall I do? And finally, in this passage, we had demanding goods and services. Please take me with me. Please take me with you. There were no offers, and that's in a sense accidental, but it turns out that of these four types, statement, question, command, and offer, offer is as well least grammaticalized in English and also in other languages, and it's arguably the kind of speech function that can be achieved with minimal help by language. So let's now add the grammatical realizations to these speech functions. Statements giving information, these are realized by declarative clauses. Questions demanding information by interrogative clauses. And commands demanding goods and services by imperative clauses. Now, interestingly, these are the three major mood types in English and many other languages: declarative, interrogative, and imperative. And as in English, many languages, probably most languages, have no specific mood type for offers for the reasons that I alluded to briefly before. How do you recognize these structurally? Well, we've sort of already seen this. So the declarative clause that starts with the subject, that, and is followed by the finite. That's, I don't. Demanding information, well, it depends on what kind of information. If it's yes, no, then it's signaled by finite followed by subject, as we saw when we looked at unmarked theme. And if it's demanding about a participant or a circumstance, then it's signaled by a WH element, always followed by the finite. What shall I do? What about the imperative? Well, your typical most common imperative tends to have neither subject nor finite. It just has the rest of the verb, which we call the predicate, in this case, take. So that's a first sketchy outline of the mood system of English, underpinned by its semantic principles. Let me say a little bit more about the structure of the clauses in move, and we'll talk about the mood element and mood types. And I'll now take examples from another dramatic dialogue, a play by Harold Pinter called The Birthday Party, one of his early plays. Now, one observation we make fairly soon when we begin to look at dialogue is, as I've hinted at already, it's made up of exchanges. And your typical exchange consists of at least one move, typically two moves. One move that initiates the exchange and one that responds to the exchange that has been initiated. So one speaker will initiate the exchange, and the addressee will in turn take on the role of speaker and respond. So here are a few examples. Meg and Petey. Meg initiating, what does it say? Petey responding, nothing much. Meg initiating, what time did you go out this morning, Petey? Petey, same time as usual. Meg, was it dark? No, it was light. As you'll see, very often the initiating move is a full clause, but in the responding move, because the interactants collaborate, you can leave out what is not contrastive, what is just continuous. So when Meg says, what does it say? Petey doesn't say, it says nothing much. He just says nothing much. And when she asks, what time did you go out this morning, Petey? He says, only same time as usual. Not, I went out the same time as usual. So, an exchange typically consists of an initiating move followed by a responding move. Both will be clauses, but as I said, the initiating move is most likely to be a full clause. The responding move is likely to be an elliptical clause where something is left out, ellipted, and only what's needed to achieve the response is included. So a dialogue then is simply proceeds as a sequence of exchanges. So here's a little bit between Meg and Petey. Now let me introduce Meg and Petey to you. They're a couple. They're in their 60s. They run a boarding house somewhere on the south coast of England. It's morning now. Petey has been outside doing something. Meg's in the kitchen and she hears somebody coming in. So she says, "Is that you, Petey?" No response. "Petey, is that you?" "Petey!" And then Petey says, "What? Is that you?" "Yes, it's me." So that's likely a sequence of moves in a dialogue. Then later on, when they've sat down and Petey's having his breakfast, he's reading the paper, Meg says to him, "What does it say?" "Nothing much." "What time did you go out this morning, Petey?" "Same time as usual." "Was it dark?" "No, it was light." Now, one reason for choosing Pinter is he's well known, he's famous for his dramatic dialogue. At face value, it looks, very much like ordinary, very casual conversation, but the very dialogue is used to great dramatic effect. Now, let's look at the structures here. Meg, "Is that?" And then she needs to repeat, "Is that?" And then again, "Is that?" So what we have here is finite is followed by subject. Finite is followed by subject. Finite is followed by subject. And when Petey finally responds, identifying himself, "Yes, it's me," subject finite. So in other words, note the significance of the combination and sequence of subject and finite in English. So the contrast between "is that" and "it is." And in fact, these two, subject and finite, bond as a combination and they make up the mood element of the clause as a move. As in this yes-no interrogative clause. "Is that you, Petey?" So "is that you, Petey?" contrasts with "that is you, Petey." So we recognize that the finite and subject function together as a mood element. And interestingly, while there is not much left in modern English of concord or agreement, when we have it precisely within the mood element. So is that rather than are those. He is rather than I am. So the concord agreement in person and number runs through precisely the mood element, the finite and the subject. And as we'll see, it's also the mood element that's picked up in a question tag. So we'd seen this already when we talked about unmarked theme, right? So in a yes-no interrogative, the unmarked topical theme is a subject and it's preceded by the interpersonal theme finite. So we've seen this already. That finite followed by subject is the unmarked theme in an interrogative yes-no question. And similarly, in a declarative then, the mood element is also consists of subject and finite, but the sequence is subject followed by finite. So both the combination and the sequence are significant in English. It is, subject followed by finite, indicating you have the structure of a declarative clause. And again, we saw that when we looked at the unmarked theme of declaratives, the unmarked topical theme being the subject. And if we now look at the other type of interrogative, the WH interrogative, okay, what does it say? We see that the WH element is a separate interpersonal element. It may or may not be the subject. In this case, it isn't the subject. It's a complement or object. And it is the unmarked topical theme, but it's also, as I pointed out before, interpersonal theme, representing the demand for information. And it's always followed by the finite. If the WH is a subject, then the subject will, of course, be followed by the finite. But in all other cases, the subject follows the finite, as in this example. What does it say? Rather than what it says, or what it does say. So, summing up, we have this organization then of speech function, orientation, giving versus demanding. And what does a speaker give and demand? The commodity, information versus goods and services. And these two variables define the four basic speech functions: giving information statement, demanding information question, demanding goods and services command, and giving goods and services offer. And three of them, statement, question, and command, have been grammaticalized in English and other languages as distinct mood types. So a statement in English, typically declarative, and we recognize it as having a mood element with subject before finite. In interrogative, well, it depends on which type of interrogative is, what the query point is. If it's yes/no polarity, then the structure is finite followed by subject. Is that? If it's a participant or circumstance, there's a WH interrogative, then you have a WH element coming first, followed by the finite. And finally, we haven't had any examples yet in the Spinter dialogue. The imperative, as I said, the most typical one, has no mood element. It starts with a predicator, but we'll come back to that. Now, that's the end of this initial run through the grammar of the move. Let me follow this segment with a little illustration, an extended passage from Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party. But all you have to do when you listen to that is listen to the dialogue and sort of attend to the changes in speech function, the changes in mood type, and the mood structures.